Hey everybody, it's Yasmin here. Yasmin Boland. I'm an astrologer, I'm a moonologer, and I'm a best-selling Hay House author. And I just wanted to hop on here today. I'm doing a full moon ceremony here in my garden in London, England, or courtyard, I should say, really. And quite honestly, I think the whole country's a little bit in shock right now. We've just been told we're going into another lockdown. So there's that. But it's the full moon tonight, so I'm going to show you, for those of you who don't have my diary, that's my Moonology Diary 2020. And I'm going to be doing a fire yagam, which is something I learned to do in India. And I'm going to be talking about the full moon. I just want to find it in here. The thing is about this full moon, as you might have heard, it's a blue moon, because at least here in the UK, it's actually October 31. If you're watching in Australia, it's already November the 1st. So for you, it's actually not a blue moon, and it's not a blue moon anyway. I mean, there's no astrological significance in this, by the way. But it's called a blue moon because it's the second full moon in one calendar month. I think the first full moon this month was on the 1st of the month, and now here we are on the 31st of October, Halloween, and it's the second full moon in the month of October in the Northern Hemisphere. But as I said, it actually has no astrological significance whatsoever. What does have a lot of astrological significance, and I know people have been writing about this, is the fact that this full moon is taking place actually very much near the planet Uranus. So I'm just going to read you a bit from my diary and then I'll talk about it. And I'm going to talk about a bit of stuff tonight, and then we're going to do a bit of chanting, and I will do a card reading, and we're going to do some full moon forgiveness as well. And in fact, if my beloved husband is listening, I would love a pen at some point. The full moon, and you need a pen as well. The full moon, this full moon, which actually unfortunately I was looking for before, I can't see here from the courtyard. The full moon promises to be an exciting time. In fact, some people might find it rather too thrilling and changeable. Well, here we've had lockdown announced. And of course, you know, I know in the States, sorry, that's my earring, got caught in my scarf. In the States, obviously, everything's really electric because of the upcoming election. It takes place pretty much on Uranus, the electrical planet of awakenings and turnaround. So the stage is set for some high vibrations. It's also a blue moon in the Northern Hemisphere. And the next full moon in a month's time is an eclipse. But it's fair to say that, I mean, it's not that eclipse season is actually starting now. Eclipse season won't start for about a month. But we're certainly getting into that very high vibe, electric feeling. And, you know, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about before we get into our full moon practice tonight. A few astrological things to discuss. One of them is that November, next month, in fact, in about 2 weeks, we get an astrological significator that I was very much hoping would signal the end of the coronavirus. And I think the fact that we've just gone into another month's lockdown here in the UK shows that's not going to happen. And what this means, I just want to get this out there now, what that actually suggests is that, in fact, lockdown isn't going away anytime soon, and Saturn square Uranus next year could actually mean we're even going to have some lockdowns next year, which is just, I'm feeling about that. And I'm sure most of the world is as well. So I just want to get that out of the way. There's something else I want to get out of the way as well. I went to Glastonbury on the weekend, which was amazing. Had an amazing time. Actually, not on the weekend, just now. We're in half-term holidays here in the UK. And I actually had dinner last night with my very beautiful friend, Rebecca Campbell, who wrote Light is the New Black and Rise Sister Rise. And we got to talking, actually, in the course of the conversation about cultural appropriation. And it's a very, very difficult subject because it's so multi-layered and multifaceted. But I I wanted to kind of, like, for me, it made me feel almost like what I do when I do my lives like this. You know, cultural appropriation could almost be the elephant in the room for some people, because I just want to tell you how I ended up going to India and why things like a fire yagam are so much, a part of my spiritual practice. So in a nutshell, I was born to two beautiful people, Moira and Clifford, who were both Catholics raised on the island of Malta, which is very much actually considered to be the home of the goddess. In fact, it boasts the oldest freestanding building in the whole wide world. It's a temple called Hajaim. And for as long as I can remember, I've been going to that temple. And I've always felt very attracted to that temple. And my father, who unfortunately passed away about 12 years ago, he was raised strict Catholic by his mum and dad. His dad was an Irish Catholic, his mum was a Maltese Catholic. And he was always told that this place, Hajaim, it's a beautiful temple. If you want to look it up, it's Hagarqim, it's 2 words. He was always told that that was some kind of devil worship place. And the reason he thought that was because he was raised in this really strict environment of Catholicism. And I mean, he would have been an altar boy, you know, he went to a Catholic boys' school. Malta was like 50 years behind the rest of the world back in those days. I hope my beautiful Maltese family don't mind me saying that, but it kind of was. It's a bit like Tasmania, where I actually did grow up. Anyway, so I was raised a Catholic in Hobart, Tasmania. And at some point, you know, I went to university and I had some boyfriends and I had male flatmates and so on and so forth. And, you know, it became apparent that that wasn't acceptable to the church. I was always on the spiritual path, but I knew that I was told, you know, like, I think I went to confession once, you know how Catholics confess, and, or maybe all Christians do, I don't know if it's just Catholics or Christians or what. Anyway, and I was told by the priest that, you know, it just wasn't on that I had male flatmates and that I was sinning and all this kind of stuff. And plus, I'm very much of a feminist, and I could not accept that you weren't allowed to get divorced in the Catholic Church, quite apart from the no sex before marriage rule. But, you know, my grandma, Helen, who was one of the most beautiful women I've ever met in my whole life, probably, you know, the most beautiful woman in some ways, you know, she was such a beautiful person. And I remember saying to Grandma Helen, who loved me more than life itself, but Grandma, I was about 22 at the time, and I said, Grandma, but if I married a man who turned out to be a philandering, alcoholic, you know, abuser, you know, then could I get a divorce? And she's like, no, darling, there's no divorce. You take whatever God has given you, or whatever. And I was like, no, I cannot deal with that. And so I kind of then segued from the Catholic Church. I actually ended up going to a church here in London. I won't make this much longer, but I just want to talk about how I came to go to India and why I hope it will be okay with people for me to be doing the practices that I do tonight. So I ended up going to a church. It was in Battersea, actually, just down the road from where I am now. And it was called St. Mark's, I think it was called, the Church on the Rise. And it was really fun, you know, people was very happy clappy and people would go and sing and all this. And again, I came across the same thing. I went to some kind of church meeting after church one day, and the guy was really, the pastor there was really judgmental about the fact that my friends were going out and having fun and drinking, and back in those days there were raves and all sorts. And he was like, well, you're not going to be friends with them much longer, you know, because people like that, they're not right, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, you can't judge my friends. You haven't even met my friends. So it was things like that that kind of put me off. And eventually I learnt to meditate, and that changed my life. And it's when I got into astrology as a result. And because I think when you meditate, it just opens you up. And I learned transcendental meditation and various other forms of meditation. And so that kept me going for a long time, and I became very much about conscious creation and the law of attraction and creating your own reality. And I really started to see how that worked. And then after quite a few years of that, and that kind of being my spiritual path, where sort of God energy had been moved out, and it was very much about I am, you know, I create with my words, that kind of stuff. And I was in India, I was in Sydney rather, and I actually was living in Paris at the time, and I had a flat in Sydney, and I had a flat in Paris. The flat in Sydney I owned, the flat in Paris I was renting, and I sublet my flat in Sydney, and I had someone, I let my flat in Sydney and I sublet my flat in Paris, and there was 5 weeks where I had nowhere to live, basically, because I'd rented out both places. So I thought, what am I going to do? I'll go to India. And I was in a coffee shop having a conversation with a very old girlfriend of mine who I haven't seen for many years, KJ, and saying, I think I'm going to go to India because I've always wanted to go to India. I have to get back to Paris now anyway, and, you know, I might as well stop off in India for 5 weeks. And, you know, I was a freelance journalist. It was easy for me. I just had to take my laptop and have an internet connection. And so this guy who I vaguely knew from around Bondi, Nadav, some of you will know him, Nadav Khan. He's an amazing musician, and I often play Idor Khan's music, Idor and Joe, and Nadav is his brother. And by the way, Nadav does some amazing stuff on Insight Timer. If you have Insight Timer, the app on your phone, look up Nadav, Nadav Khan, Kahn, I think. And anyway, so Nadav leans over and he goes, hi, Yasmin. I'm like, oh, hi, Nadav. I kind of didn't see you sitting there. And he said, listen, I wasn't eavesdropping, but I just heard you saying you might go to India. And I'm like, yeah, I was thinking, you know, I've got nowhere to live for 5 weeks, so I might as well. Why not? I've always wanted to go and spend an extended amount of time there. I'd been there once or twice before quickly. And he said, oh, you should go to this ashram called the Sri Narayani Peedam. And I'm like, oh, okay. He said, there's an avatar there called Narayani Amma. Okay. He said, you know what an avatar is? I said, I do actually. I knew an avatar is a God incarnate. And I was like, I do actually. He said, oh, well, look here, I'll write you down. And he gave me an email address, and I went home. And cut a long story short, I ended up in India about, 5 days later, sparking this firewood. I ended up in India about 5 or 7 days later, like literally going, what the heck am I doing here? Like, how did I end up in India? Like, what even happened? And I had the most extraordinary 5 weeks of my life. I mean, apart from, you know, giving birth, which is pretty off the scale, that time in India was pretty effing weird, if you don't mind me saying effing. And it was just the most miraculous place, and I will write about it one day. But it was, so there, basically what happened was I connected with, if I can say, the cosmos, the universe, and the goddess. And I had been very much in touch with the goddess for various reasons that I won't go into right now. But the ashram in India was all about Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga, and still is. It's the Sri Narayani Peedam in southern India, just in a little tiny town called Tirumalakodi. And it was there that I learned about doing things like, well, they do a massive fire yagam. That's what that is. That's a fire yagam on full moon. Like, that's what they will have done tonight. And they have, like, I don't know, like 10,000 people or something turn up, and it's amazing. And so that's where I really started to learn about chanting, which I do so much of now, and basically it changed my whole entire life. But I just sort of wanted to tell that story so that you know where I came from. That was about the first time I went to the ashram. I was very single, so it was before I met my husband Olivier, let alone before we had our son Louis. So it was at least 15 or 16 years ago now, and I've been going pretty much ever since then. Sometimes I go a lot at once, and then it's a space, or I don't go for a while, and then I'll go a few times again. So yeah, that's where I come from on this, and I just want people to know that my connection to the goddess energy, for example, and to chanting in particular as well, because I'm going to do a bit of chanting in a minute, you know, it comes from the heart, and it comes from a place of appreciation, and I think that's really important. And the fact that my family comes from Malta, I was told by Dr. Glenys Livingston, who is one of the world's foremost goddess scholars, who happens to live in Australia, I told her I was from Malta. She said, oh, that explains everything, because, you know, my lineage is from Malta, and Malta is considered by many to be the home of the goddess, or one of the homes of the goddess, but by some people, the home of the goddess. Okay, and so I think that's my connection to goddess energy, and I don't necessarily just go with, you know, Celtic goddesses, because I think one of the reasons why I wanted to come back to London after living in Sydney was very much to do with the Celtic goddess energy in this country, in the land, the energy of the land, and there's a strong feminine energy and goddess energy here. But I'm also very attached to some Hindu goddesses, as some of you will know, and other goddesses who are neither from the Celtic tradition nor from the Hindu tradition. But it's about the goddess energy, and it's about feminine energy. And I said I'm a feminist, you know, I am a feminist. And the goddess energy draws me in so strongly. So I just wanted to kind of just explain where I'm coming from when I connect with goddesses, and also when I do chanting, you know, that it is coming from a place of pure love and pure gratitude, because really it connected me back to my spirituality. And I remember somebody said to me, you know, when I first got back from India, and can I just say, talking of, you know, adopting cultural mores, you know, I turned back in Paris, and, you know, in India you kind of have to always wear a scarf, for example, around your shoulders and your neck to be decorous, you know, to be modest. And you know, I remember coming back after 5 weeks and feeling quite uncomfortable taking my scarf off and just getting back into sort of normal living, and now obviously I'm fine. But someone said to me then, so what happened? Why was it so amazing? And it was a girlfriend of mine that actually I'd learned to meditate with, Jane. And I said, the thing is, Jane, I feel like that at some point when I got onto the spiritual path, I kind of got off the Christian thing. I brought Jesus with me, for the record. I still strongly relate to Jesus, and I still actually strongly relate to Mary, as you know, obviously she's a divine feminine energy, and Mary Magdalene. But I felt like I took God out of the picture, or goddess out of the picture, and I felt like by going back to India and reconnecting with the goddess energies there, through the fire yagams, through the chanting, through all the many different practices there, it reconnected me back to my spirituality. And I don't pretend to be, you know, an expert in, you know, Hindu traditions, because I'm not. I mean, I'm not. And in fact, what I've always felt in some ways, rightly or wrongly, hands up, you know, I've actually felt sometimes that the less I know, in a way, the more I can embrace it. Because one of the things that really cut me off from Christianity was almost knowing too much about what the church says and all the rules, and you can't live with that person, you can't have sex, you can't get divorced, you know, all this stuff. And in a way it kind of put me off. And so for me, knowing about Lakshmi, Saraswati, Durga, mantra, learning more about mantra, learning about yantras, which are amazing, and also I have a really strong connection to Ganesha, you know, that's where I'm coming from. So it's out there, it's done, it's said, and I hope that that will be enough for people, and nobody feels that I'm taking advantage of someone else's, you know, heritage. It's part of my body, it's in my bones, it's in my blood, and I'm so grateful, especially to India and to the goddesses, for this. So I just want to say that, and thank you to Beck Campbell for a good chat last night as well, because I think that's actually just inspired me to say all this. So here we are, about to do some chanting, and I'm going to actually do a chakra clearing chant, which again I learned in India at the ashram, and I've told the story many times, so I won't repeat it again. But I basically was taught this mantra, ignored it because someone said, no, don't worry about that mantra. Went back to India 3 months later, and someone else said, want to learn a mantra? I said, sure. I went to their room to learn this mantra, and they taught me exactly the same one. So I thought, okay, I'm getting a message from the universe, from goddess, from my teacher, whoever. Learn this mantra. And it's an amazing mantra, and you can actually find it on iTunes, not recorded by me, recorded by someone else who goes to the ashram. And if you just type her name in, her name is Kulreet Chowdhury, so it's Kulreet, and then I think it's Chaudhry, Dhary, Kuri Chaudhary. If you look up her book Sound Medicine, you'll get the spelling of her name. Go onto iTunes. I think it costs 99p. And it's a really powerful mantra, and it uses seed mantra sounds and also the sounds of what they call in India the Panchabhuta, which is the 5 elements, and it combines them, and it's really great. It clears your chakras. So let's clear out our chakras before we get into the full moon side of tonight. I know you won't probably know, and I can't say you know the words because I've been taught by my teacher in India, these are not words, they are vibrations, which I love that concept. Like, even though you can write them down, they're not words, they're vibrations. So I know most of you won't know it, but I'll do it 3 times and just let it wash over you, okay? And just remember, it's basically going to clear out your chakras and my chakras, and hopefully the world chakras. So here we go. Hari Om Nam Lam Mam Vam Sim Ram Vam Yam Yam Ham Shiva Ram Swaha. Hari Om Nam Lam Mam Vam Sim Ram Vam Yam Yam Ham Shiva Ram Swaha. Hari Om Nam Lam Mam Vam Sim Ram Vam Yam Yam Ham Shiva Ram Swaha. And we call in the archangels, the saints, the gods and goddesses, and in particular, as always, I feel Kuan Yin here with us, urging us to be merciful and compassionate with each other and ourselves, especially those of us in the UK who are just going back into another lockdown. I'm going to use the energy of the full moon tonight to make some changes in our life which need to be made. So I want you to start thinking about what changes in your life you want to make. What do you want to release? Release can be very sudden tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, write down in the comments what you want to release, and I'm going to be able to read them, I think, on my phone. And Olivier, if you're listening, I'd love a pen, please, darling. I know he's listening, but he's not responding. Okay, I'm just going to look at your comments on my phone in case anyone's got any comments. Here we are. So that's all very meta. I'm watching myself watching myself. Someone's pets came to sit with them, that's nice. Okay, there we go. Someone's releasing anger. Someone's releasing an eating disorder. Big, that's big. Fear, control. Pen, oh thanks darling. Thank you. Fear of letting go and judgment. Okay, so people are putting things there. So Patricia, you're saying you're embracing health. Now, full moon is the time to release stuff, okay? The full moon comes once a month, and it's when all our emotions come up, and it's a really good time to detox and let go, which is why the Chakra chant is really, really powerful. And it's also why all our emotions come up, so it's the time to process them. So think about what you're releasing. Now, if you happen to have my diary, this is the one for this year, you can do a forgiveness list, which I'm going to do. I'm going to put on some beautiful music from Edor and Joe, who I've already mentioned tonight, and which I have their permission to play anytime I like, as long as I tell everyone who it's from. So hopefully you're going to be able to hear it. And I'm going to ask you just to think about, I'm going to write mine down on a piece of paper because I can't. I'm going to play this track. I'm just going to give us 1 minute of beautiful music, and I'm going to write down what I'm releasing, and then I'm going to symbolically put it into the fire for all of us, okay? So all of us are going to have our piece of paper in there. Tell me if you can hear this. Hang on. Nope, you're not going to be able to hear that because I can't hear it, so you definitely can't hear it. It might be because it's on here, so let me try using this with it's just beautiful to have some beautiful music because it raises the vibration, and that's basically what we need to do. Okay, so I'm going to just take a moment to write down what I'm releasing. There we go. And I'm going to ask you to put what you're releasing in the comments, and I will then burn it for all of us. Okay? And if you're at home, you've got a piece of pen and a paper, do it on that. You can just riff it up afterwards. And now what I'm going to ask you to do, it's actually even a bit more difficult for some people, is who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to forgive this month or from ever? Write their name down as well in the comments or on a piece of paper. And it might be you need to forgive yourself. Here we go. This is into the fire for all of us. It's burning. Just let it go. Just let it go. Do this actually. Just sweep away from your body. Get rid of it. And just feel the moonlight, even if you can't see it, even if you're indoors, just feel it. And now, because we're letting something go, that is now completely gone. Yep, it's all gone. I'm going to ask you to bring to mind someone or something you're really grateful for. And just think, thank you, universe, thank you. Thank you, goddess. Thank you, God. Thank you, goddess. Thank you, angels. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you to my angels and spirits and guides. And I watched a really powerful presentation today on Facebook, so you can probably look it up and find it, from Tony Robbins, you know, who's the self-help guy from the States. And I know that some people don't like him, and he's got a bit of a bad reputation for being a little bit of a bloke. But it was amazing. He was talking about, he said, the way to transform your life every single time is to love whatever happens. And obviously, that's going to be easier for some people than others, because for some people what happens to them is much, much harder to deal with than others. But if you can try to think of something that's happened to you recently which has been tough, and try and accept it and think it's for my own good, or it's for that person's good, or it's helping us somehow. Just try that with me for 1 second. And just trust that the universe has a plan. I know that's, you know, sometimes it's just unforgivable what's happened. It feels it. But it's very hard to help you if you're at that level of in your life. That is very hard for me to help you from here. But assuming it's something that you can see your way through to possibly forgiving and possibly accepting, it will be so powerful for you. You're not doing it for the person who upset you. So that's the amazing Edo and Joe, EDO and Joe, JO.com. You'll find them amazing music. All right, so I'm going to do a card in a minute. So I'm going to do a card for how we are all doing with whatever it is we're releasing, okay? But I'm also just going to do now a chant, Ganesha Chant again, which I learned in India. In fact, I think I'm doing the chant to the tune of Joe and Edo on their album. So Ganesha, if you don't know, is the Hindu elephant god, and there's quite a story about how Ganesha ended up with an elephant's head. But basically, Ganesha kind of saved me a couple of years ago when I was going through some stuff, and I came to the situation where I was trying so much to make a pain that I was going through go away, and it wasn't going away. And so in the end, I remember it one night in particular, it was in London, one night, I just lay on the bed with my hands above my head in the most vulnerable position I could come to, and just went, okay, bring it on, just bring it on. And I just appealed to Ganesha to help me. And what came to me, and the words that helped me to go the whole way through, were, the only way out is through. The only way out is through. And I envisage myself on the back of an elephant, trampling through the jungle, and the only way out is through. And I know that Ganesha has a reputation for helping us to go around obstacles, but I felt like Ganesha was helping me just trample through. I couldn't go around the obstacles. I had to kind of go through them, and I had to go through that stuff. So, you know, I'm pretty fond of Ganesha, and Ganesha's really a great energy to bring in at the time of the full moon, when we have to go through our stuff to get through to the other side. So I'm going to do the chant, and I'll do the card, and we'll call it a night. All right? Let's just do. Okay, here we go. I'll do it 3 times. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. 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 And just ask Ganesha for help to go through whatever you're dealing with right now as you release it. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. If you don't know Ganesha, do some reading, do some research. Ganesha's amazing. All right, who wants a card? Who wants a card? I'm going to do a card for everybody. Card for everybody. Some kind of advice from the universe. These are my beautiful moonology cards. Some kind of advice from the universe about whatever it is that we're releasing. So are you ready? Oh, nothing is set in stone. Now, that's an interesting card to get for this, because on the one hand, it can mean we need to work a little bit harder on what we're releasing. However, it can also have quite a different meaning, and a very useful meaning for our purposes. In a form of astrology known as horary, where an astrological chart is cast according to when the question is asked and decoded, a void of course moon means nothing will come of this matter, or this situation will bear no fruit. This may or may not be good news depending on what you're asking. For example, if you're worried about something, whatever it was, this sign can be taken as a sign that you have nothing to worry about. So I think it's a sign to say, it's dropped. We can drop it. You know, someone was saying they're dropping their eating disorder. That's massive, but you can drop it. People are dropping fear. It says, however, if you're asking about a new project, it's a sign to adjust your expectations. So in fact, what the card's saying, and I always say I wrote this, but you know, I've been using them since they came out, but I still don't know them all off by heart. If you're worried about something, whatever it was, this card can be taken as a sign there's nothing to worry about. So whatever was on the piece of paper that I burnt for you, this card can be taken as a sign that there's nothing to worry about. Pretty amazing. Thank you, universe. Remember, the cards can only predict what you're currently creating. And the other message is surrender to the divine and trust in your highest good. So I think that's actually an amazing sign to say whatever it is that you're worried about will bear no fruit. Forget about it. Move on. So on a night of talking about how I came to chanting, I'm going to end with a final chant, which is actually, I was going to anyway, but this card just backed it up, because it's a Sanskrit chant which I learned at the ashram, which goes Om Namo Narayani. Now, if you go to India, or if you go on YouTube, you'll see there's a lot of chanting in India, Om Namo Narayana, which means I surrender to God. Om Namo Narayani means I surrender to the Divine Mother. And the ashram where I've been going all these years in India, Sri Narayani Peetham, is actually dedicated to the goddess Narayani. And as with many goddesses, Narayani is a triple goddess of Saraswati, Lakshmi and Durga. So when we chant Om Namo Narayani, it means I surrender to Lakshmi, Saraswati and Durga, to the Divine Mother. So I'm going to finish with that. Ollie B, I'm not sure, yeah, okay. And I hope you have an amazing full moon. Remember, there can be really amazing turnarounds now. There can be really amazing turnarounds. All right, so tune into them. And if you're in England, we're going back into lockdown, so I'm going to start my dailies again. I'll do my daily messages again while we're going through all that. Get us all through, because it helps me as much as it helps anyone. 3 Om Namo Narayanis. Chant with me if you can chant where no one's listening. I always wonder if my neighbours are listening. Who knows? Om Namo Narayani. Om Namo Narayani. Om Namo Narayani. And I'm symbolically putting all our troubles and all our worries into the fire for transmutation. Hands on your heart again and just say, thank you, universe, thank you, goddesses, thank you.